You only got 5 minutes and a mile-long agenda. Here are 2 hyper-practical methods that you can connect quickly without sacrificing depth and meaning. The first one I've learned to be a bit of a psychology hack to compress time. And the second one is what Neen James would call totally a method to fold time. So you actually get to do 2 things at the same time. I'm Chad Littlefield, and for the last 10 years, I've spent with 100,000 plus people helping uncross their arms and get people meaningfully connected in gigantic 6,000 person arena settings and small group executive team meetings. And I now get to host this Connector Summit. And so I think a lot about connection, and so these ideas have been field tested on a whole bunch of folks so that you don't have to be the guinea pig, you can just use what works. First method is the goodbye method. To illustrate the goodbye method, let me bring you into my dog walk 2 weeks ago in my neighborhood. A for sale sign just went up outside my house, and all of a sudden, all these neighbors around where we live in Pittsburgh, who I talked to a bit, but not a ton, are coming up, and some of them with tears in their eyes. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you're leaving. I thought you were gonna be here forever. Yeah. And they're just saying all this really lovely, beautiful, meaningful, meaning-dense stuff. And it's the fact that we were leaving that created the urgency that said, ooh, I gotta say what I gotta say right here and make it count. It's kind of like, I did not expect to share this. When Will, my late co-founder and co-author, passed away, I basically lived at his house for the last 2 weeks as he was in home hospice. And it was in those moments, like when he was in state of awareness, I felt like I needed to pack in the deepest possible thing into that moment. Whether I needed to do that or not, I don't know, probably not. But there is something around our psychology that creates this urgency of I must share what is true and get it out now before I can't anymore. So a less morbid way to bring this in and leverage the psychology without the doom is really simply to give a prompt or a question like, if this was your last day working with this colleague, what encouragement would you offer to them? So connection before content, if you're super tight on time, that sentence, if this was your last day working with this colleague, that sentence right there allows you to say, okay, skip all the nonsense, skip all the small talk, and say what you really want to say to this person. Offer them an encouragement. Now, specifically, notice I said offer an encouragement, or what encouragement would you offer them? It's a very appreciative question, as opposed to, if this was your last day and you were never going to see this person again, tell them what you really want to say. That might not accomplish the same intent. So if you're going to use this goodbye method, make sure your question is really uplifting and appreciative. The second method is some brilliance from my brother, Ben, who runs the product side of We and Me, and make sure that everything gets shipped to where it needs to go and that the site, and thank you, Ben. This is my way of saying thank you, Ben. You're doing a great job. If this is my last day to work with you, you're doing a really great job. But the second method, he actually created in a team meeting. So it was me, Ben, and previous chief of staff, Kim, and we were getting to the end of our meeting, and we had a bunch of action that wanted to happen. And in a remote context, right, everybody clicks the big red button, end meeting, and then you're in a vacuum of aloneness back in your own context. So Ben had the brilliance to just ask, what would you like the next 15 minutes to look like? That is such a good question, because as soon as I speak that out to a group, it's like enough social accountability that it will actually edit and change what the next 15 minutes look like. And so the way to fold time, to do connection before content when you're in a pinch, is to make that essentially your opening prompt. To say, hey, I recognize this group is really busy and we have a lot to cover today. And so as our connection before content, can you jump into groups of 3 and just share what would you love the first 15 minutes of our meeting to look like? Come back a few minutes later, popcorn that out, and then do that. Let the group vote on what they want. This is how we want to spend our time. They share how they want to spend their time, and no more than a few minutes later, you are connected and related to each other, and you're actually doing that thing. What a beautiful way to connect to each other and to the purpose of why you're actually there. Last idea, and I'm going to get close to the camera because this is going to be a bit confronting. Will used to say to me that efficiency is the enemy of connection. And so if you're watching a video in hopes that you learn the way that you could do meaningful connection and only spend 30 seconds on it ever, I'm here to say that maybe connection is worth prioritizing, because Peter Block would say, without relatedness, no real work can occur. And so the irony in all of this, and in the statement of efficiency is the enemy of connection, is that when a group is connected, they can move way more efficiently. If you think about it, if you've ever seen the movie Ocean's 11 with George Clooney, or any heist movie, where like the gang gets back together to pull off the next big heist, when they're working with people that they've worked with really deeply for years, they don't have to explain everything, and they have all these communication shortcuts. So George Clooney can just say, hey, let's do what we did in Panama. And all of a sudden, they just saved an hour of planning out something because they already have done that. They already connected over. They have that base of connection. And so in other words, if you invest the time and prioritize the time to get really connected and related, you can move way more efficiently and create way more impact in whatever area you're trying to do that in. In other words, you can create way more impact in whatever you're doing. Goodbye.